Hello there, welcome to the Crescent Beach Society Storytelling Series. Hello everyone, I'm Harrison Van Wall. Yes, of course. So I'm the relatively new historian for the village of Sodus Point and a trustee of the Sodus Bay Historical Society. And I just wanted to welcome you all to this iteration of the Sodus Bay Historical Society storytelling series, and welcome Rosa Fox, the historian of the town of Huron. And hope you guys all enjoy it.
So this program is going to be in two parts. The first part is going to be the early history, meaning from about 1788 and through there up to about 19 teens of Crescent Beach. And then Harris and I are going to break off and give you guys a chance to tell stories, because this is built as a storytelling program. And I'm going to tell a story about Crescent Beach for about the first half hour, 40 minutes, and then we'll let you guys, I know, I'm looking back there at Sandy, and Sandy could keep us entertained all night long.
By telling stories.
By telling stories. For those of you who don't know me, I'm a retired band director from North Rose Wolcott, and my boss is over there, John Bogart sitting in the back. I retired in 2014 and wound up becoming historian for the town of Huron by fluke, because that's when I was working on my book, which David is selling out there, on Great Sodus Bay, and we found that Huron didn't have a historian at that point in time. So long story short, that's what Rosa became. And the past decade has been a really fun ride doing this history stuff, going from being a band director and directing a group of kids like you sometimes. But you notice how you got shh when you heard that? That's good. So this is kind of a pleasure to be over here. Sandy, we're going to say, now no story yet, Sandy.
I can tell a few stories. But Bill Bishop from Sodus and Glenn Procius, Sodus Point. These two guys, if you want stories, you need to talk to them.
All right, all right. Well, they're going to get their chance. So we'll get started on Crescent Beach here. As I said, this is the beginning history of Crescent Beach. We're not going to get into all the cottagers and the floods and that kind of stuff. But I'd like to start with this poem that Pearl Rook wrote. Oh, I'm not getting my, I need to see my other view. We didn't check this out. Hang on a minute.
You want to hit the lights?
Yes,
Yeah.
please.
There
we go. Okay, there we go. So this poem by Pearl Rook was shared to me by her grandson, Dan Underhill. I don't know if, most of you probably know of Pearl's poems. She wrote extensively about the Bay and especially Crescent Beach. She wrote this poem in 2006 in response to an article, a newspaper article, and referring to Crescent Beachers as squatters. And that was really offensive to Pearl. It's been offensive to me. I read the term frequently during 2016 and 2019 during the high water on Facebook. And I thought, come on, you guys. So I'm hoping that this program will dispel the myth of Crescent Beachers being squatters, and that will inspire everyone in this room to be a Crescent Beach advocate, as well as an advocate to the beach itself and to the residents. So Pearl's poem. Do not think or speak lightly about this necklace of land. Instead, explore the old sandbar, tested by time against the tides of wind and waves. It embraces island gems, precious shores of stone, and sequins, sparkling water. Its clasp, sometimes rendered by nature, mended by man, secures the harbor, a crown jewel, for your heirs and mine. And so I would like to take a sip of water. Dedicate this program to Pearl and her husband Doug Rook and their good friend Sylvia Pitts and Paul Fox. Together, these four were pretty strong advocates and activists for Crescent Beach, Lake Bluff, and Sodus Bay. And in the words of the late civil rights leader and U.S. representative from Georgia, John Lewis, he would say that the four were makers of good trouble. This is a picture on Crescent Beach down by Lake Bluff, probably back in the early 1950s, with Paul Fox over on the left, right there, and his wife Betty. These are David's folks, my husband David, and they're his Aunt Harriet, Paul's sister. They had a cottage at the foot of Lake Bluff where Crescent Beach merges with Lake Bluff, and enjoyed that since the mid-1920s when they moved down from the top of the bluff. In the background there, that treed area, that's Leroy Island. And I include my mom here because she infused in me the respect for the bay, the love of Crescent Beach. That's her in her old, either it's an Ed Corral or an Ed Longboat, out in front of Leroy Island, and in the distance you can see Crescent Beach, long strip. So over the years, and there's purposely no picture there, over the years, different events and incidents and people have, and requests have stimulated me to want to do a history of Crescent Beach because I don't know of one. I haven't found one. But this particular newspaper article really solidified for me the need to get going on this. Erastus B. Fuller, owner of Lake Bluff, has sued the Charles Point Association through Del Stowe, trustee, to obtain possession of the sandbar between the bluff and Charles Point, which he claims to own. Now, Del Stowe had a cottage on Charles Point. He was also a Clyde attorney, and so he was representing Charles Point in this. Fuller had a long history on Lake Bluff. He worked for the Reverend Fay Hovey Purdy with his Methodist church camp at Lake Bluff. And Fuller purchased from Purdy the whole Bluff campground in 1879. So he thought he owned the sandbar, they thought they owned the sandbar, and in order to get to the core of who owned the sandbar, I went to Corey Sheffield's book, Point Charles Sketch, which I have my copy here, which is in a 3-ring notebook because I go to it all the time. There's a tremendous amount of information in there. And I'm going to come back to Corey's stuff in a minute. But before we do any of that, we've got to go back to the Revolutionary War. The war ended September 3rd, 1783. And with the war ending, many states had overlapping and conflicting claims to Western lands based on their colonial charters. These disputes were settled with granting some states preemptive rights to those Western lands. So a preemptive right is the right to purchase before others. In 1786, with the Treaty of Hartford, Massachusetts was given the preemptive rights to negotiate with the Haudenosaunee nations for the purchase of land in western New York State. Then in July of 1788, 2 years later, Massachusetts sold their preemptive rights to Oliver Phelps and Nathaniel Gorham. And you've heard of the Phelps and Gorham Purchase, right, in high school?
Right.
So in July of 1788, after they purchased it from the Native Americans, the survey from the 82nd milestone marker at Pennsylvania-New York border to Lake Ontario was surveyed. And that 82nd milestone marker was along the 42nd parallel. It was 82 miles measured off mile by mile from the Delaware River to along that southern border of New York that separates New York from Pennsylvania. And here's a map of the Phelps and Gorham Purchase. The red line, that red line right there, that was the first survey that was run in 1788. And we'll talk more about the blue line in a little bit. But, whoops, there was an error. So, how did they know there was an error? Well, they didn't really know there was an error until they did the second survey. There were all kinds of conspiracy theories. There were theories that the surveyors were drinking all the time and they were drunk while they were running the lines. There was a conspiracy theory that while Colonel Hugh Maxwell was in charge of this survey, he was off for a few days to Geneva visiting, and the guys were out, whether they were drinking or not while he was out, we don't know, but they were doing the surveying without his supervision, and so it must be wrong. So they had to have a new survey run, and they did that in 1792. We need to go back to that 1788 survey and look at the equipment they were using. At that time, they were only using a regular compass, which gave magnetic north, which could be off to some degree. In the literature that has come out since that survey, it was reported that the second survey used a transit. But how could they use a transit when the transit wasn't invented until 1831? So they must have been using something else, and looking through records and all that, they used a contraption that was very much like a transit. In fact, it was the predecessor to the transit. It was called a theodolite, right, Bill?
Yep.
Okay. And it was a little bit heavier and a little bit bulkier. The transit brought things down in size and made it much easier for the surveyors. So the mistake was not in the drunk guys and Maxwell going off. It was in the equipment, and so they had better equipment. So now as we look at this map, we see the red line is the first the preemption line going from the New York-Pennsylvania border up to Lake Ontario, which is known as Maxwell Bay. And then the second line, the second preemption line, we're probably familiar with Preemption Road that comes in, runs into Ridge Road and 104. The second line ran up and comes straight up to the shores of Great Sodus Bay. The area in between the two is called the gore. I think they stole that term from dressmaking and tailoring terms. A gore is like a wedge-shaped piece of fabric that's put in to fill out a costume or a dress or what have you. So that's the first and the second preemption line. I like this topographical map because it gives you the preemption road coming down through here, and then it comes straight up. And the preemption line happens to be the border between Huron and Sodus. And if you carry that preemption line right up to the lake, it kind of splits I'll do it over here. It kind of splits Charles Point off with the sandbar. This is the map that is in Corey Sheffield's book. And it shows the plan of the development of Crescent Beach and the development of Charles Point, which is here. Sodus Park is down about where the community building is. And we're going to come back to this map in a little bit because we need to understand what happens with this land west of the preemption line and east of the preemption line. So the state of Massachusetts gave preemptive rights to Phelps-Gorham. They were able to purchase the land from the Haudenosaunee. They stuck with it for a couple of years and then got out of the business and transferred it to Robert Morris. Morris then transferred it to Charles Williamson. Both Morris and Williamson were land agents for Sir William Johnston Pulteney. More on him in a little bit. So east of the preemption line, the Cayuga Nation sold to George Clinton in the state of New York. New York then sells to Charles Williamson. Whoa, here we go. Williamson sells to Dudley Walsh, who is another land agent for Sir William Johnston Pulteney. So we've now brought Pulteney into the picture on owning land on both sides of the preemption line, and it was a pretty significant amount of land. The original Phelps-Gorham purchase was 2.5 million acres. And so you add that land that's east of the preemption line to it, and you have a pretty substantial amount of property. This is not Sir William Johnston Pulteney, but he connects to him. Sir William Johnston Pulteney, born William Johnstone in 1729. In 1760, he married Frances Pulteney, daughter of Daniel Pulteney, a cousin of William Pulteney, who is pictured here, who was Lord William Pulteney, the first Earl of Bath. Lord William died in 1764. Francis's father died in 1731. So Francis, Lord William Pulteney had no heirs. He wasn't married, he had no children. So his estate, he was a very wealthy man, his estate went to Frances. So she got all his money, all his land in Scotland. So here's Sir William Johnston Pulteney. In 1788, Frances died, leaving Sir William Johnston Pulteney the entire fortune. With the money Sir William inherited from Frances, he purchased 1.2 million acres in the eastern states, including in New York State. When William died in May 1805, the estate passed on to William and Frances's daughter, Henrietta Laura Pulteney, and yes, Henrietta in Monroe County is named after Henrietta Pulteney. Yep, and Bath, New York, is named for his home territory in Scotland of Bath. So neither of these two ever visited Sodus Bay, New York State, Wayne County, of course not, and nor the United States at all. So they were absentee landlords. So Henrietta died in 1808, and from her trust, which was overseen by Ernest Augustus, he sold in 1817, almost a decade later, he sold all of that estate to Joseph Fellows and Andrew McNabb. Those two names should be familiar to people who have read Sodus Bay history. They were surveyors from Scotland, and I don't think they worked for Pulteney, but I'd have to look back on that. John Duda, do you know if they worked? Huh?
I don't know.
No, I don't know either. But they're responsible for a lot of the surveying in this area, including Clyde, Glasgow Street, Port Glasgow, the islands on Sodus Bay, Arran, Butte, and Leroy, Arran, Butte, and Islay, which is Eagle, Leroy, and Newark Islands. And I don't think Bonnycastle came from them, but I think they inspired the owners of Bonnycastle to name it because of all the Scotch names. So they were significant developers of Port Glasgow, which is resort, and into a shipping port. Eventually McNabb sold to Fellows, and Fellows owned it all. In March of 1866, Fellows sells to Georgette Loomis. Now, Georgette Loomis is the oldest daughter of Benjamin Loomis, to Benjamin's first wife. She died, and Benjamin married her sister, with whom he had Rose Loomis. So Rose and Georgette are half-sisters. Georgette was really the businesswoman in, dealing with all the land transactions and things like that, and Rose was the good-hearted, let's give everything away kind of woman. So they were interesting. Both women were nuns. Georgette was an Episcopal nun, and Rose was a Catholic nun. So Benjamin wound up having it in 1866. It was farmland for him. He had cattle and orchards out on Charles Point, took the cattle across the bay, and then he wound up transferring the property, selling the property to 12 purchasers of Point Charles, and that was in 1880. And the Point Charles cottagers began laying out lots on the sandbar for development in 1888. And so we come back to this, and you can see the scope in 1888 of the development happening there. Pay particular attention. It's hard to read, but right at the new preemption line to the left is a Wayne Avenue. That's going to come up in a little bit. So this is not to scale. Oh my goodness, this is way not to scale. You know, Crescent Beach is much longer than this. And you can see down at the bottom, Butte Island, that's Leroy Island. So back to the 1903 case of Fuller versus Point Charles Association. How many of you think Fuller won the litigation? Oh, you guys are good. I don't have to ask about Point Charles. Okay, so Erastus B. Fuller of Lake Bluff sued the Point Charles Association for possession of a part of the sandbar. The case was called last week before Justice Edwin A. Nash, who decided that Mr. Fuller had no cause for action. Now, this is a copy, thanks to Jane Milam, who's standing back there. This is the court document, all, I don't know how many, 10, 12 pages of it, 4 pages of which are Edwin Nash's decision, and I summarized it. The first thing that he said was that Fuller's west boundary was the shore of Great Sodus Bay, with the line extended north across the sandbar to Lake Ontario. 2, the Point Charles Association's east boundary was that of Lake Bluff, E.B. Fuller's west boundary. 3, the Lake Ontario shoreline formed the north boundary of both Lake Bluff and the Point Charles Association. And 4, now this is interesting from the perspective of land. The erosion of the north face of Lake Bluff of about 130 feet between 1875 and 1903, which turns out to be about 6 feet a year, had disappeared, quote, had disappeared into the waters of Lake Ontario, end quote. Just disappeared, gone. And 5, the erosion of the sandbar on the north side and the accretion into the bay on the south side has been gradual and continuous and was made upon Point Charles land. There has been little to no accretion to the mainland except on the east side, which is where the mainland is, from time to time. So that was his judgment, and poor Mr. Fuller. So by 1905, the sandbar was a booming place. The cottagers got together a few days ago and named the bar Crescent Beach. A fine new steamboat landing has been constructed in front of Wayne Avenue. Remember, I told you to remember that name. So that the beachers will not be obliged to remove their shoes and walk with awe over the sacred planking on the private grounds of the Charles Pointers. Boy, there's a little bit of an edge to sarcasm there. Woo! Another good steamer dock has been built in front of the mushroom cottages. Crescent Beach is a paradise for children, and there are a lot of them. So, speaking of mushroom cottages, there they are. This is a real photograph postcard, and I have about 3, maybe 4 of these, and on one of them, the actual postmark, cancellation mark on the back is 1907. That's when the divided backs were started. Prior to 1907, the backside was only for the address, and if you wanted to write a message to somebody, you had to write it on the front. You'll see that in the next postcard. And so you can see the different roof lines of these cottages. We've got a gable roof line over here, but these cottages all have this hipped roof, kind of a pyramid shape. And interestingly enough, back in the early 1900s to about 1940, the Sears catalog and the Montgomery Ward catalog were offering cottage kits that looked just like these. And so I'm envisioning, you know, they talk about the mushroom cottages, they were popping up just like mushrooms, but that was kind of the style. They looked like little mushrooms. And I'm just envisioning the trains coming in with all these cottage kits and having to transport them over to Crescent Beach. So this is a view of the sandbar probably before 1907 because it's on that undivided back. And we've got, you know, a few cottages here and there. In the background is Eagle Island. And then we've got the mainland over here about by Pier 53. So, and this is taken from atop Charles Point, or Point Charles. This view is looking east, and I'm sure it's a familiar view to you all. It's Lake Bluff. In the distance is Chimney Bluffs, and right here is the water tower, or not the water tower, the windmill that drove water up the hill to the water tower so that the Lake Bluffers and the hotel that was up on top of Lake Bluff had water. And these are electric poles going down the beach from Lake Bluff. This is one of my favorite postcards. This shows Crescent Beach from atop Lake Bluff. And over here we've got the tippy tip of Sand Point. And you've got South Shore. This is about where the Sodus Bay Heights is. Coming over here is Newark Island. And here's the top of the wind vane of the windmill. And this little whoop, right out here, that is Knob Island. That's Knob Island. Now, Knob Island didn't move. This is about, no, I'd say this is 1907, 1908 as well. Knob Island has been right there all along. What did move was Crescent Beach. And Crescent Beach is now back here with Knob Island. From the, you know, the breaches over the bar, the different storms that washed, you know, he talked about accretion on the bay side, and that's what's happened in what, 100 years or so?
And what's the approximate distance from where, in this picture, back to Knob Island?
I don't know, David?
I don't have a guess.
I do know that somebody who's a contemporary of ours used to ski in between the sandbar and Knob Island, but that's risky because it's shallow in there.
Yeah.
And I couldn't guess. I don't know. And this is Knob Island, back in about the 1930s. It was a duck blind. It was owned by a gentleman on Leroy Island, and then when he passed away, it was sold to another group of gentlemen on Leroy Island, and now it's owned by one of the Crescent Beachers. And there's a little sign out there, and I was out there today, and forgot to get a picture of it, that says, "Welcome to Knob Island." And actually, the willow tree that's over here, there's still a willow growing out there, and I think it's the same stock as from that tree.
Do you know the names of the gentlemen who owned it?
Yeah, but who owned it before?
Yeah.
First, Charlie Sandway.
Oh,
Should be, his son owned a place down here off Thornton Point, yeah. And here's a view from a little further back atop Lake Bluff, and you can see Knob Island out there. And over here, it looks like there's been some sort of breach. You've got the tree growth, and then all of a sudden, nothing.
when is that?
I don't know the exact date. I think this is a Burgess picture. Gil, I think this is one of yours.
Looks familiar.
This is the storm of 1908, which was pretty severe. It took out cottages, it took out many of the trees, and I think people were just pretty dumbfounded. What you see here, this is close to Lake Bluff. This is Leroy Island and then Newark Island in the distance. And this cottage, I have found when I paddleboard around out there, I find doors and things laying down in some places out in the lake, and who knows what's out there. Another of the same spot. How did that shift? There we go. And this is Burgess family people. These are Gil and Holly's pictures. Now, this is looking toward Lake Bluff, same year, 1908. This is the former laundry and steamboat landing for the Lake Bluff Hotel. There's a road here, and the carriages, the horse and wagons would come down this road and go up and around to get up to Lake Bluff. The Fox family bought this building and turned it into a cottage in about 1925. It burned in 1990 and is replaced by another cottage in the same footprint that is called the Acorn. This was the oak, and the building that's there currently is the Acorn. Now, the sandbar is back here. This little white dot right there, that's about where the lake shore is. The bay shore is out here. And if you take a line and go diagonally up like this, that's what's left. All this has eroded from Lake Bluff. When I first moved back here and became part of the Fox family, Paul would take us up on the bluff and say that he used to play baseball way out there, and it was out in the middle of the lake somewhere. And now David and I can say we were married way out there, somewhere in the middle of the lake. But Lake Bluff has done a mitigation project where the face of the bluff was terraced and planted, and it's lasted, it was about 20 years ago that they did that, and with that treatment, the erosion is minimal. And so this is looking toward Newark Island, again, breach, and you can see the duck blind out here, Knob Island, there. And some of the boathouses, this would be taken from near the bluff. These are some of the boathouses that were on the shore. I think Lake Bluffers and Charles Pointers finally made peace, and maybe some of the Bluffers bought land from the Charles Pointers so they could use the bar past Fuller's time. And here are some of the boathouses along the shoreline. This is another Burgess photo. Those boathouses are all gone. In fact, where they stand is now lake. So, another one of the July 1908 breach. This is on the west side. This Bob Bloomer shared this with me, and the cottage on the left is actually the Newton cottage, Pearl Rook's father. That's the cottage she grew up in, with one of those with the hipped roof. When the bar washed out in the 50s, they had to move that, and it's now over closer to the bay. And I'll be pointing out some of that in a next video, couple slides. Ice at winter on Crescent Beach, it does happen, it's there, and you have a lot of blowholes, and you've got the ice shelf and all that. This is looking east toward Lake Bluff. There are a few people who have braved staying out there during the winter. And here are some Burgesses wandering around on the ice shelf. Today they'd be scolded for doing that, but back then. And here they are up on top of one of the mounds. And this is Lizzie Fox wielding her way back from checking out one of the blowholes. And a view from atop Lake Bluff looking out. Yeah, you gotta love the blowholes. They're just so unique. And landmarks. Okay. Many of the natural and man-made landmarks along Crescent Beach are now long gone, erased by wind and waves. Knob Island is no longer, it's no longer an island. It's still there, it's just not an island anymore. Having been joined by Crescent Beach as the sandbar over the years has moved further into the bay. The Lake Bluff windmill is erased, with only the remains being the footings and the round 3-foot in diameter clay pipes in the lake about 20 yards offshore. Charles Point cottages from the early period of 1880 through 1900 continue to enjoy families visiting them every year. However, most Crescent Beach cottages from the early era are gone, with the exception of a few like the Newton Rook and Bloomer cottages, though both remain victims of high water and rough weather. And so this is one of the landmarks that still remains. This is in the lake. It's a dock. There was a boathouse there. It's now in the lake. It used to be in the bay. Here's a look at it. And I just took this today walking out there with a group of people. And you can, in the next picture, there's the dock in the bay looking southeast toward Eagle Island. And that's about 1925. That's Paul Newton. I showed this to Dan a few days ago, to Dan Underhill, and he was certain that's his grandma, the little girl on the dock. That's Pearl with her dad, Paul. So you can see it maintains as a landmark, reminder that it's not called Shifting Sands it's called Shifting Sands for a reason. And here's, Lizzie's a good drone flyer. So that dock is right about here. This was the bay shore. Now, this is the bay shore. That's how far this has moved in. Perhaps not quite as far as the center section where Knob Island is out here. This was more or less a straight trail across, and it's changed. And we got Charles Point down here, and these are the eyebrows. The famous eyebrows that you've been hearing about that we won't talk about tonight. Also here, this is the breach. This is the big breach. In 2019 and 2017, we had a breach on the east end as well. And this is the view from Lake Bluff with the islands and Charles Point. You can see the break there. And so I thank Bob Bloomer, Gillen Holly, Lizzie, David, of course, and Sodus Bay and Huron History Centers, and Dan Underhill, and Wikimedia Commons. And with that, I'll take a couple questions, and then we need to get into our storytelling session. So, any questions?
I want to go, yes, I'm going to have to ask a question. I want to go back to that first purchase you talked about Purdy
Yeah.
selling, and then it wasn't mentioned in the long list, so I was trying to capture with the Purdy again. Was that the Reverend Purdy?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, it was. Yeah. That's a good point. I should.
Yeah, I just
Yeah, it was Reverend. So you're familiar with Reverend Purdy?
Yeah, no, Purdy, yes. Reverend, I haven't met that connection.
He was a renowned evangelist. He preached all over the East Coast, and he started a Methodist camp at Lake Bluff. And so he had people coming from all over the area. They would take the steamer from Sodus Point, get over and get off, and he charged them, I think, 6 cents or something to get up the hill. And then when they got up there, everything was free. But yeah, he also had, if you're over at Skipper's, there's a historic marker for him there.
Yeah.
He had the sawmill and the dock there. So yeah. Okay, does that help you?
Yeah.
All right.
I have a question about, there was a dispute between Fuller and the Point Charles Association about land ownership, and that was resolved, but then as the land moved, as it moved back into the bay, were there more disputes about land, or?
That's a really good question.
Because, I mean, how, that was totally different land then.
Yeah,
so-
yeah, and that's an ongoing dispute today. In fact, that's something we're kind of dealing with right now, so, but yeah, you're right, John.
So we met a family on the Rose Loomis a couple weeks ago who own where the breach is now. They own the property under
Oh,
the breach. The
yeah.
Land family, and some are from New York, some are from California. But they came back for a little family reunion.
Oh, nice.
And they said, we still hold the deed for the property under the water. But the town of Huron, being as amazing as they are, charged them $1 a year for tax.
Oh, really? Oh, you're kidding. So that if it ever regains itself, they can be back on
They're
their
planning
tax
to
roll.
come back.
Yeah, oh my gosh.
We hope it will regain. That's
Yeah.
what we're really looking forward to.
Neat. All right, so, yeah.
I don't have a question, but I have a clarification point. Actually, if you give me about 5 minutes, I can tell you about that cottage that was moved.
Oh,
You showed it about 4 slides back.
okay, the Newton Cottage? Yeah,
Yeah,
okay, go ahead.
that was the Bloomer Cottage.
Oh,
Or
okay.
the Rook Cottage.
Rook, Newton Rook,
Cottage.
Newton Rook.
That was the farthest cottage east on Charles Point. In the late 40s, there was a breach right there. That cottage was cut off from Charles Point. There was a breach between that cottage and Charles Point. That's why the cottage was moved to Charles Point. I worked on the crew that moved that cottage.
Did you? Okay, awesome.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
I worked for Burcroft Marine Construction Company up in Putneyville. We took a big D8 bulldozer over there for, it was operated
You built
by
a big
Bill
berm.
Senior, S&S Transportation in Woket, if you wanna check some more history.
I've gotta get
And
together
what
with
they did
you.
was they built a
Yeah.
new foundation where the cottage was gonna go. We took the bulldozer over on a barge. It was a barge very similar to the one that's down there placing stone right now. About half or 3/4 the size of that. I drove the tug that pushed that barge over there. We landed the bulldozer on the beach. It was on the beach side, east of the break. Used the bulldozer to fill that break in. I don't know what
Wow.
permission from we bulldozed that in. We carried a whole bunch of timbers on board the barge. Got the bulldozer down, bulldozed it in, laid a wood road out. Then the house movers came in, jacked it up, it was ready for us. Used the bulldozer as a power source to move that cottage off the bar onto the solid ground again.
Yeah, yeah.
Then we loaded the bulldozer back on the barge, and then the bulldozer bulldozed some of the break back in, but the bucket, we used the bucket just like they've been dredging down there. This is a clamshell bucket. Took the spoil that we had bulldozed into the break, dug it back out, recreated the break.
Wow, oh my gosh.
That's the way we found it, and it took about 3 days, 3 or 4 days. That was the summer of 1951, in late August, I would say.
Okay, all right. We've gotta get you together with Dan so you can tell him that story. That's Pearl's grandson,
And I
yeah.
remember when they used to have the ball diamond up on Lake Bluff.
Oh.
And there was a ball diamond between the water tower and the lake side of Lake Bluff. It was a
Yeah.
softball field, I think,
Yeah,
but there was a baseball field up there.
yeah,
You
yeah.
used to be able to
Well-
drive right all around it.
Like I said earlier, David's dad used to play baseball up there, so yeah, that's cool. That's cool. It's Glenn? Are you Glenn? Is it?
Yes.
Yes,
Yeah.
okay, Glenn, thank you
No,
very.
that's
I
Bill
just
Bishop.
thought it
Huh?
might be interesting.
That's Bill Bishop.
Bill Bishop,
How we
okay,
did
Bill.
that thing.
Glenn's over there, okay, all right. Thanks, Bill, that's great. Thank you for adding to that story. Yeah, with that, Harrison, should we move to storytelling
Yeah,
since we
that's
got?
perfect.
All right, I have one story here that about a month ago, somebody sent me a video, and I was hoping Chris Arney would be here, and doggone him, he said he was gonna come and he's not here, but we're gonna do this anyway. So, let's see. Sandy, maybe you were even watching this. There's no sound.
Is this the opposite?
These are the Aquascots. This is the Sodus side.
Art Putnam right here.
Oh, okay, all right.
Jared Palmer here too.
Who's that,
Is that you, Art?
No. I don't know who that was.
This is when they did it on the sandbar side of the bay, when they
Yeah.
did the show.
Yeah.
Because then they went to the other side.
So this movie is the Jill Collier, Bill Collier's daughter, sent it to me. She thought that Bill would want me to have it. It's about an hour long. It's got a lot of rehearsal practice time over on the east side with the Aquabats, and then the Soda side had the Aquascots. And when these guys come around the next time, we'll let Art tell a little bit about it.
Just like Florida.
So they were a local group?
Yeah, some of them are here tonight. There we go. Off they go. Woo! All right. All right. Great. Okay, lights. So Art, you want to tell a little bit about that? Jerry?
Well, the Aquascots was a really great program, and started, I think it's, 1959, started with Harriet Arney, who used to run Arney's Marina, and it just provided a great place for kids, teenagers to go to get together and enjoy the bay and learn how to water ski and do tricks. And we had shows during the summertime, various places, and it was
Yeah.
really a great time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you had those competitors from the east side who came over. Did you guys
Yeah.
ski together or ski against each other? Yeah.
You know, we had a 6-man pyramid and
Yeah.
2 tripods, those are the guys. And
Eventually, that ski jump of yours wound up over on the east side
we had
with that long-haired, white-haired guy back there with David. And I think he went off that thing a few times, one too many. So, neat, awesome. Thank you, you guys. Yeah.
Did George Lookup own a lot of that property on Crescent Beach?
He owned the property on Eagle Island. I'm not sure about Crescent Beach. That's the next stage of this whole Crescent Beach
Yeah,
research
I
stuff.
thought I was told that he owned a lot of property.
He may have.
Walt Plashy did.
Yeah, Walt did. Yeah.
He's on our deed.
Plashy is, yeah, because well, when I was a kid growing up, there were hardly any cottages over there because they'd been washed off in the '53 storm. And then I came back from out in the Midwest, and all of a sudden there's cottages out there. It's like, what's going on? And it was about that time, in the early '70s, David, that Plashy started selling.
Well, he had been attempting for quite some time, but he was more successful back then.
Okay,
Yeah.
yeah, so, yeah. It'd be interesting in your deeds to look back and see how far back it goes if you've got Georgette Loomis and Benjamin on it.
One of the problems with the deed issue is if you're looking, if you purchased from the county as a tax sale, where the county had acquired the property because somebody didn't pay their taxes, when the county sells those properties, that's the beginning. There's no abstract that goes back further unless you do your own search, which you certainly can do, but just go look at your deed or your abstract, it's not gonna go any further back than, in this case, Walt's ownership.
Yeah, okay, yeah. Another story. Harrison, do you have a story?
Oh, I have a lot, but not referring to that side of the bay.
No, any side,
Oh,
this
wow.
storytelling's open up to the whole bay.
Wow. Oh, you put me on the spot here.
Well, think about it, maybe somebody else has a story.
Yeah, let's see if anyone else has one. I'll come up with something.
I'm going to share. We came to the Bay in '74, and most of the cottages had been wiped out, we thought, from the storm of '73, but you're saying
Yep.
53?
Well, I grew up in the sixties, and so I'm going on what was happening
Okay.
in the sixties.
Because when we-
There was a storm in
It's happened
'73.
repeatedly.
Yeah,
Right, but like
Yeah.
when we started going there as teenagers, that was our spot to go. We take the boats over there at night and we'd find doors and parts of houses. And
Yeah.
those were our bonfire materials, and we'd swim in the lake and it was really cold, and then we'd run over and jump in the bay in order to get warm. But it was a wonderful time growing up, being able to go over to the sandbar.
did you grow up on the
On
Leroy?
Leroy
On
Island,
Leroy,
yeah,
okay, yeah.
So you didn't get to that point in history, but it was definitely a very cherished spot for several of us who were here, so.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. I won't tell you any more about what we did.
That's okay, I think we all know. We've all been there. Okay,
So Rosa,
yes,
you want-
Sandy?
You want any stories? Of course.
You roll, girl.
We were on Grape Street, my grandparents bought in 41 across from Smiley's Liquor Store. That was right next to the road that goes down to the yacht club. And so I was probably about 4 or 5, and I remember on Facebook people putting on the amusement park over by the beach. Well, that was not the first amusement park, was it, Glenn? No. So I was about 4 or 5, and there was an amusement park right up where Krenzer's had their parking lot on the south side of the street. Glenn knows a lot about that. It's on our Sodus historical website, or maybe it's on the one for Sodus Bay, I can't remember. But Glenn knows a lot about that because he worked there as a teenager, and he could tell you a few things about it.
Helen Doreen started it. She built the skating rink, and that was known as the Bay Shore Amusement Park. It was just where Krenzer's has their pontoon boats right now. They had a Ferris wheel, they had kiddie rides, we had a batting cage, there was a basketball, and then just to the east of that was the Pierce House. And then out in front, there was a little restaurant that Helen ran, and then later on, Steve was in there, and so was Ellen Lewandowski. She
And
had that.
Krenzer's were in there too.
Pardon?
When they redid it, Krenzer's were in there.
Yeah.
Because Betty used to serve the ice cream.
Yeah. And that was back in, I think it started like in 54, 53.
Oh, really? Okay.
And it was only there for maybe 5 or 6 years at the most.
Okay. I remember seeing older pictures of the Bay Shore that go
And then-
back
and then
earlier.
in the end of that skating rink, there was a little stage, and maybe some of you remember there was what they called Evelyn and her 5-star Rangers. They were kind of dressed in Western wear, and they had a square dance in there on Saturday nights.
Oh my gosh.
But
Wow.
the Bay Shore Hotel was right in that
Pardon?
area. The Bay Shore Hotel was kind of east of that, right, in that area?
Oh,
No, that was,
okay.
that was about where the drugstore was, right in there, or Bay Shore was right in there, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
But that was torn down, and that was before my time.
And the drugstore was run by Carl and Lizzie Webster from Sodus. They lived on High Street. Carl worked in Knapp's drugstore up in Sodus, but in the summertime, they'd have the drugstore open.
And then Clay Bissell went in there and had a barber shop next to it at one time.
Right. And there are some pictures that I got from Carl Webster's. He originally took the pictures, and his great-grandson got them loaded digitally and sent them to me. So you've seen some on Facebook. Somebody else posted one recently of Carl and Lizzie, but it was from that set of pictures that was in Carl's materials.
Huh.
Just a little sidelight, when you were talking about the Arnies, there was told that when George Arnie came here from Cape Vincent, he was told right off the bat, all the fish that swim in the water, and all the waterfowl that flies over belong to the Hulvers and the DeVille.
That's good, that's good. Mr. Stewart, you had your hand up.
Yeah, hi Rosa.
Hi.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Hank Stewart, and my cousin Harriet Bonin is here. So Harriet's mother, Margaret Stewart Beal, is my aunt, and so our grandfather Lyman Stewart. We had one other uncle there, Lyman K. Stewart Jr. So that's Lyman had 3 kids: Margie, my dad, and then Lyman Jr. And we're the folks that built the house on Newark Island in 1905.
The big house.
Big house, yeah, before, a couple of years later, Mr. Cunningham built the house next door, which is the big house that you can see.
Okay,
That's the
all
Cunningham
right,
Coach Carriage
yeah.
Company out of Rochester.
Yeah,
Mr. Cunningham was friends with my great-grandfather and my grandfather, and came to visit and liked the place so much they sold him the land, and he built a house very similar looking. If you could ever see the original Stewart house, it's kind of covered up now by trees, but it's a similar looking house. And before they built that house in 1905 and moved to Newark Island, they were previously in the Newton Rook house on Charles Point, on
Crescent Beach, yeah.
And that dock you were showing, that cement dock, my great-grandfather did that. Was
Did
very
he?
proud of that.
Okay, all right.
And I mentioned that story to tell you that when they built the house on Newark Island, of course on the east side of Newark Island is how they would mostly access. There was a ice house over there, and that's the docking that they would use to get on and off.
In the guest house?
Yep.
Yep.
But my great-grandfather wanted a dock on the west side, so he built a concrete dock on the west side, the remnants of which are still there. But he was quite proud of that dock and said, that's gonna be there forever. Every time I go by with a boat, I think, well, it's still there. Not when I would wanna tie up to it, it's probably found a few propellers. It's still there, so.
Yeah,
That's
neat.
that's a little more story about.
Thanks for that, Hank.
Yep.
That's good.
Hank, who owned the big boathouse that you're talking about, right behind
Yes.
the drugstore? Years ago, the Viga, what, was the yacht in there?
Yeah,
The Viga?
the Viga, yep,
VGA?
yep, that sounds familiar, yep.
Is that all gone now? I haven't sort of kept track of what's going on behind Cruiser.
I don't know, Bill, to be honest, I haven't been back there in a while.
That's where we used to park the barge in there sometimes when it was too windy to go out on the lake or something. That was our port of refuge back in there.
Yep.
One of the things I do miss on the bay, one of the things I do miss on the bay is your big boathouse over there
Bloomers, I think.
on Newark.
Yeah, I think that might have been Bloomers.
I think that was Bloomers.
Hmm. Yeah, thanks, Hank, that was great.
Yep.
How about somebody on this side? Yes.
So this was a story that my neighbor told me years ago. I don't know if it's true, but I feel like it could be true. If anyone has any thoughts on it, I'd love to hear it. So, Jack McGuire, who is my neighbor, who has the property on Leroy Island that is now a great big open space on the island.
Yep.
So anyway, when he had that, he told me that in during one of the storms that washed out the sandbar, the man who owned that property at that time, before Jack had it, went down to check everything, because it was a huge storm. So he went down to the island to check everything, and there was a cottage floating out on the bay.
Yep.
He got in the boat, rowed out there, and hooked onto it, and pulled it back, and that is what is sitting now as the boathouse at that property.
It's true, because my mom saw him do that. She told that story for years. Yep. Charlie Loeb, I think, was his name.
Okay, because there was a little ice house looking structure at the edge of the water that looked to me like it would have been maybe an original little boathouse shed, you know?
Okay.
And then this sits in front of it, which
Yeah.
it made sense to me that if that's what occurred, but I'm.
And it's got that hipped roof, the pyramid roof.
Well, the cottage was just not the boathouse. I think it's just a.
The boathouse
In
that,
front of McGuire, it's McGuire's. I think it's just, I have to look. I
Look
think
at
it's
it.
just.
there is
Oh,
a
well,
boat.
he's had it re-roofed. He had it, Jack had
Oh,
it
did he?
re-roofed.
Okay,
Yeah.
all right,
So it
recently.
may have been, but it's just
Ooh.
regular, yeah.
Ooh.
My house still has the hip roof.
Oh, does it?
Yeah,
Okay.
mine was a
You're
1905.
south of him or north?
South,
Deal,
south,
sir, south,
Yeah.
okay.
1905.
1905. My house.
Oh, okay, oh,
With the mushroom top.
Brockmeyer.
Brockmeyer, okay, all right, gotcha. Oh, yes,
one.
okay, gotcha,
The red
yeah. All right.
I
You've got, I know there's
I do
something.
have a question. Knob Island's the first time I've seen Knob Island. So my great-grandfather, my great-grandparents had Purdy House on Lake Bluff.
Okay,
So that's the Reverend, but not associated with Reverend Purdy that I know. All right, so a different Purdy.
no, it's the same Purdy, he was a busy man.
Thank you, now you all know that. So. Jesus. So my great-grandfather duck hunted and lost his arm hunting on Sodus Bay. And I don't know if he lost it at Knob Island.
Well-
So that my great-grandmother, just a quick story, who was from Clyde, was a nurse, and then they became my great-grandparents.
Well, I found an arm out there.
I want to know, was it the left or the right?
It was in the cottage that got
It's now on the left side now, but
There was another Duck Island, at the end of Leroy, there was an island down there that, by Fowler's Marina.
by Fowler's, okay,
Yeah, if you're not careful when you go through there, you might hit the cast iron stove that was out there.
So I don't know where he was duck hunting or, but
Yeah.
you've got names on the Knob Island, I thought
Yeah,
that was kind of
yeah.
neat. So if anybody had any more information on Knob Island.
Someone who lost their arm.
Or someone. We know that.
Is there any jewelry in the yard?
Wow, you guys, this is a tough crowd.
Well, this has been, Art,
Yeah, I delivered mail for 21 years to Pearl
yes, yeah.
Charles Point, all the way down, and then I went over to Newark Island and all the way around Eagle Island. That's what I did for 21 years. I got it from my brother-in-law at Grenzer, so I took over for him, but I was the last of the mailmen.
Yeah, yeah.
Thank you.
And who was one of your favorite people to deliver to out there on the sand? I know. There you go. Yep. I was waiting for that.
Ed took over from
He took Helper,
Yeah.
George Helper.
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
a line of them.
There was a nice article on all
It
that.
was 100 years.
Yeah.
Delivered the mail.
Wow. Yeah.
I
Hank,
just gotta say, I got it.
6 days a week, 6 months out of the year, from May 1st to October 30th, not the 31st. Halloween, you couldn't go out.
vacation. Hank?
So I just mentioned George Helper, so I got a quick George Helper, you can back me up if this is a true story. So when I was a boy, I had to go over to Helper's Marina, which is where Crencer's is now. And my dad had the same routine with Mr. Helper that my grandfather had with Mr. Helper, and they would flip you for it. And I observed this one time when I went over, my dad wanted to buy an anchor, and George had an anchor for sale, and he said, I don't want to sell it to you. And my dad said, well, what do you mean? I said, I don't want to sell it to you, I'll flip you for it. And they both pulled out quarters, and they both flipped the quarter in the air, and if it came up two heads, and whatever, my dad won. If it came up two tails, George wanted to get head and tail, they'd flip again. And that's how you did business in Sodus Point back then. You had a quarter, you flipped it for him.
That's fun.
So try that at, the restaurant.
Yeah, right. That's
So who
fun.
got to keep the quarters?
Not me. I got a nickel to go to the Rexall drugstore on Sunday with my grandfather and get a candy bar and a newspaper.
Oh dear. All right. Well, this has been a lot of fun.
Actually, I got a story.
Go ahead, Gil.
The story is even older than I am, because it's, my dad, if you may remember, was a great reminiscer.
Oh, yes.
And as he was reminiscing about his boyhood, this would have been early 1900s. And he has a story, which he told repeatedly, that's why I remember it, about riding across the bay on the steamer Sunbeam from here to Lake Bluff. And he told how he and his boyhood friend, Gardner Mason, would he thought that the skipper, whom he called Old Cat Fields, would swing in close so that they could jump overboard and not pay for the ride. That brings up the question, did you pay your fare for riding the Sunbeam after you got to the destination? Of which there were many around the bay. So
Yeah,
I don't
right,
know,
right.
but that's the way he told the story. So.
Yeah, oh, that's good, that's great, huh. All right, folks, thank you very much, this was fun. Bravo. Harrison, what do you think? We should do this
Yeah, I'm
again?
thinking we should do this in the
Yeah.
future. Keep an eye out. So our hope is going into the fall, winter. I know some of you probably won't be around here, but we're gonna try to do a scanning drive at the lighthouse. And so if there's any photos, documents that you'd like digitized, we'd really love them to have a digital copy in our collection. So you could keep the physical copy. We just like to have something for our research and to draw on. And we always love hearing your stories. The recording of this will be going, as soon as I can get it on YouTube, I'll put it on there and then post that out through the Sodus Point group on Facebook. It'll be on the historic Sodus Point website as well. And I'm sure Rosa would
I'll make
put
a
it
link
out
to it
on
on here.
her side of the bay. So-
Before you leave, I'd like to put in a couple plugs for Huron. Huron Day is September 20th from 10 a.m. to 3 p.m. There are some programs that will be had in the church over there, as well as the History Center will be open and there'll be vendors. The programs are, the first one, I don't remember the times, but there is a flyer out there you can pick up from David on the way out. The first program is on genealogy and finding your family roots and using, the tools of genealogy and what are some of the roadblocks with it. The second program, we have a wonderful kid at North Rose Wolcott. You may have seen the articles on him and his Facebook posts. He's gone graving. Parker Maybe. He's going to be doing a program on restoring gravestones and all that effort. And then we're going to have an afternoon of storytelling with some of the local Huron folks. So more of this over there. So that's on September 20th. David does have copies. If you don't have a copy of Great Sodus Bay, not by Walter Henry Green, but by Rosa Fox, David's got some out there. They're $25 and no tax, just that, and it's a donation to the town of Huron. So.
Hey Rosa, could you just mention the Mad Boat Race next summer as part of the Historic Huron?
Why don't you do something about Rose Loomis first?
Okay.
You're speechless?
I'm not usually speechless.
All right, I'll do the boat races. Next year, 2026, is the bicentennial for Huron, Rose, and Butler with our good parent town, Wolcott. We were all old Wolcott at one time. And as part of the Huron celebration, in addition to Huron Day, we're going to have people-powered boat races at Pier 53. And we'd like people from across the bay to be involved in that. And by people-powered, it means you can't use a motor, sorry, but you can use oars, paddles, whatever you want to. But the best thing is if you make your own people-powered boat out of recycled materials, cardboard, pop bottles, whatever you want to do. And come on over to Pier 53 on July 11th and we'll set you up for registration and to get in the people-powered boat race. So, Rose Loomis.
I shared this with the Wolcott Rotary Group recently, that SOS published a strategic plan in the fall of 2023, and a donor called me on Christmas week, and he said, I read the plan, I'm very excited about it. He said, I'd really like the idea of next generation. Let's get the next generation involved. And he said, so I'd like to buy a boat that you could use to take young people and residents and so on out of the water and tell them about the ecology and the history. And I thought, this is great, a pontoon boat. That would be fantastic. We get 12, 14 people on a big one. And he said, oh, no, we're not on the same page. And I said, well, what size are we talking about? He said, well, 50 passengers. and I suddenly realized I was in trouble. And so we talked a little bit more, and I said, well, what kind of boat? you know, I was sort of hoping for a big cat, you know, hanging, but, but he said, oh, something like the Rose Loomis. Well, I've never seen the Rose Loomis. I came here just after the Rose Loomis left, and he gave me the amount that he wanted to spend, and shocked me. That's when I did wet my pants. And so he said to me, well, we can spend $1 million. I'll try to stay under $1 million, but we can go over if we have to. And I was so shocked at this, but he said, he gave me this one line that really touched me deeply. He said, unless you have a cottage or a boat, you can never experience Sodus Bay. And he said, generations of my family have experienced it. And he said, we later, as we talked, found out that for 10 years, University of Rochester had been running camps for kids. 1 out of 2 kids who live in Sodus have never seen Lake Ontario. Or North Rose Woket. They've never seen it. So when they would bring the kids to the lake, the kids would ask 2 questions. Number one, what is that? They had no conception of what that much water meant, what it was called. And the second question they would ask is, who does it belong to? And the University of Rochester team would say to them, well, of course it belongs to you. And they said, you know, so the donor said, I'd like to make sure that the next generation, and he just loves our community, he wanted to bless our community. And so the boat got here in first week of May, and we put in over 600 hours getting it ready. After a year of searching, we couldn't find a boat. Really disappointed. And in January of this year at a board meeting, someone on the board said, well, can you give us an update on the boat? And I said, there is no boat. And Nell Gardner was in the back, and she raised her hand and she said, why aren't we trying to buy the Rose Loomis? And I said, what are you talking about? She said, well, it's been through a $450,000 renovation, and it's for sale. And the donor, I called the donor the next day, he called me back a week later and said, Rose Loomis is coming home. So by August, we were able to get her ready, got our Coast Guard inspections, finally found captains of 16 interviews, finally found captains, and a donor came to us and said, we don't want people to have to pay to enjoy the bay, so you charge $2 and we'll pay the other 28 for every person that goes on the bay this summer. So the Saturday morning tours have been full. They've been a delight. And people who have grown up here say to us at the end of the tour, I didn't know half of that. And so that's why I'm so delighted to see this turn out tonight, because our history is rich. And as we've shared bits and pieces of this on the bay, people just loved it. And so that's our work right now.
Thank you, John. So on that note,
wait. Jeannie's prompting me. The Saturday morning tours, 10:30 a.m. We're going to run them to the end of September, and they're 10:30 a.m. And those are the $2 tours. I said free, but you got to pay a $2 registration fee. And then Friday night and Saturday nights there are Sippin' Sunset. Sorry, out on the water on Friday and Saturday nights.
Good, thank you.
Those of you who have not seen or read Rosa's book, it's really worth it. For those of you who like Sodus Bay and want the history of it, it's really worth it. So I invite you to
Thank
pick
you,
up a copy.
Jerry. Thank you.
And thank you for this evening.
Oh, Kathy, did you see that there were trees out there?
Yes, I did.
Okay, all right.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you, everybody. Thank you for coming. Enjoy your evening.